thank you for coming to the Zoom session. And now I say hello to Germany. Hello, René.
Hi, good to see you.
So may I ask you to shortly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm René Mauer, 43 years old, not in Berlin right now, but living in Berlin. I am a professor for entrepreneurship and innovation at a very European business school by the name of ESCP. At some point in time, this was for École Supérieure du Commerce à Paris. Now it's only the acronym ESCP Business School. We're a multi-campus business school, so that's containing campuses in Paris, London, Turin, Madrid, Warsaw, and Berlin. And I'm there since 2015. Before that, I was in Aachen University, again, west side of the country, very big technical university. And also involved there in a couple of startup activities myself. So I created a technology startup in microscopy at some point in time. Also have a little bit of a family business background. So the family's in landscape gardening. I created or co-founded the improv theater as well. So there's a connection to improv theater. So I'm also an improv theater actor. And research-wise, as an academic, I've moved into looking deeper into what it means to decide properly in uncertain situations, which I guess then makes sense in the context of many other things. Also co-created a consulting network on another method that also deals with uncertainty by the name of effectuation, and then the network is called Effectuation Intelligence. Yes, and maybe that's as much for an introduction.
Now, there are many different things like entrepreneurship and improv theater and science and so on. So what drives you? What is it what you're fascinated about entrepreneurship, innovation, improvisation, and etc.?
Well, I think there's always a little bit of a biographic element to it, right? So when I came out of school and it was a little bit uncertain of what to do now, which I guess is not entirely unusual, there was this idea in my head, hey, you could actually go and study business, but with the family business and the parents in my head, they always said, it would be actually good to do an apprenticeship first, because you have no clue what a big, large company looks like. So if you decide to actually go and study big, large companies, you may want to go and see how one is from the inside. So at that point in time, I did some applications, and the decision was eventually a crazy one. It was the decision between, at that point, Daimler, so Mercedes in a way, and on the other side, 3M, the US innovation company. And I think it was an act of rebellion to not go for, the German automotive company, which literally supplied the family business wherever it could, right? So all the trucks in the family business were obviously Mercedes. And instead I went to this crazy Post-it and Scotch tape company. And that was interesting. And it was kind of a first step into, looking into innovation, these kind of things. And when I then studied business administration, it was a little bit like, yeah, okay, it kind of makes sense, but it's also a little bit, all the stereotypes. It's a little bit dry. It's a little bit one-sided. And then I got back to the entrepreneurship part, also through the family business connection. So I got a little bit more involved in the family business as well, and decided that after the studies, I would move on to actually do a PhD on entrepreneurship, because I like to do more about that and learn more about it. And at the same time, I had started theater at university, because I thought I need something that is not business administration management. And then those things kind of merged at some point in time. So when I did my PhD in Aachen, I continued doing theater, but I couldn't, arrange my schedule with the normal stage theater practice schedules. rehearsal schedules. So I tried improv theater, and I literally died because it was so difficult to move into these uncertainty situations. So I guess it was also some kind of a self-exploration part to then do that on the hobby side. So starting with improv theater, but then also digging deeper from an entrepreneurship research perspective into what does it actually mean to properly and constructively act when everything around you actually feels as if you would run away, want to run away and do something else, but not that uncertain stuff in front of you.
So you mentioned that it merged. So I hear like there's arts like improv theater, there's science, entrepreneurship, PhD, and so on, and there's the family business. So how did these different fields merge, or what did you see emerged out of that?
So I think in the family business, the family business kind of expelled me when I started going down the business administration study path. Kind of expelled me. So the situation, dad stands in front of you and says something like, we are all engineers, you're not, leave, that kind of situation. And then I was kind of welcomed back when the guy studying business all of a sudden could kind of, crunch numbers and figure out that, or could figure out where the problem is in that sense, right? That was kind of the business administration part bringing me back to that side. For the other sides, it was literally being trained in uncertainty situations, so doing the improv stage thing, going on stages, surviving that, coming to actually like it, which is kind of a process there, and then working on the kind of uncertainty situations that you bring yourself and colleagues into. That's the stage part, and at the same time getting interested in what are the details of the decision making of the entrepreneurs, and in doing that in research, discovering that there is a big literature on improvisation, that there are other concepts popping up, effectuation, bricolage, whatnot, that are also kind of connected with that notion of uncertainty. Although uncertainty still is somewhat underdeveloped in that field of entrepreneurship. And I think then I must have been around 2010, I ended up going to an Academy of Management conference, doing my first workshop there, where I was combining my entrepreneurship research activities, but also inviting Second City in Chicago. And we also, we all had one great fun event where obviously everybody in the room needed to go through some improv theater exercises with the Second City people. But we were also then discussing, what are the relationships, what are the differences, what are the commonalities when we look at different concepts. So I think, you can either tell the story, it was all coincidence, which to some extent probably is true, but then it's also coming back to me as, things coming together at some point because there's some interest, common interest, some energy in there. But yeah.
So I think many people do not try to be an entrepreneur or an improv actor because of the uncertainty, because it is, dangerous in some way. How did it change it? Not only you personally, but what do you think? What kind of skills did you learn, or what kind of mindsets did you have, so that you even perhaps like it to decide and act in uncertain situations?
I think so. I know myself personally, and I am a person who can get very much used to things, right? Or who kind of gets used to situations, places, relationships, and all of that. And I could probably say that I personally still, I do feel change, right? And I still remember times when it didn't feel good at all, right? So I think what you definitely train on the micro level by just doing the improv theater activities is you just, you enter into uncertainty, you hate it a lot, in the beginning, but it's somewhat fascinating too, do that actually and train yourself in that. And I think it's kind of a micro training activity in just getting used to it. I mean, I would still say, and this is a very big, let's say, misunderstanding, even at ESCP now, or in certain communities, where, whenever anything uncertain hit us over the COVID period now, colleagues would come to me and say, you shouldn't, you don't worry, right? Because you have it all figured out, and that's actually what you like. And I always have to tell them, it's not that I like and love uncertainty, and I particularly don't like it every single minute of the day, because that's freaking exhausting, right? But I would say that I can confront it. I can go to it. I can go into it, and I even have trained the mindset of making and getting something out of it. Sometimes worse, sometimes better. Okay, but that doesn't mean that I want to, be on the edge every single second of the day. That's definitely not it. But I think it's clear that fear is, can guide lots of decisions and lots of activities of human beings, and we know that there's a good reason for that, right? Because the tiger behind you, you may want to just run, because otherwise you're dead. But that there are ways to train working with fear in general, and then also getting a more constructive approach to that domain of situations. Maybe that's an approach.
Now you're in the field of higher education, so based on your experiences and your background, and perhaps even personality traits and so on, this is a long way to learn that. So how can you teach others who have perhaps a different biography and different personality traits? How can you, or can one, teach or support people to deal with this uncertainty, to better, you said, confront or even decide in uncertainty? What do you think do people need as a training, as skills, as mindsets to do so?
That's a very interesting question. So maybe to start, I mean, our goal is not to make everybody an entrepreneur, right? We're not in that ball game. We do want everybody to consider it, for sure, right? And we usually tell everybody in the room, and then some believe it and some don't, that although there has been all these discussions about entrepreneurs need certain traits and certain need for achievement, certain resilience, and internal locus of control or whatnot, we usually tell everybody in the room, we strongly believe that everybody can be a successful entrepreneur. And then everybody usually listens, because they go like, really? I never thought I actually could. I was just interested, and that's why I took the course. And then we add the disclaimer by saying, but probably not with each and every idea. Right. So what that tells us, or tells me then usually, and it's maybe also a kind of a self-reassuring activity when we do that, we have come to accept that there's a broad diversity usually in the room, with very different expectations when it comes to getting to know entrepreneurship in a way, and that it's more, that's really the part where I think as a you're not a teacher anymore. It's more like the learning journey facilitator, if that's not a too bulky term here, right? So it's where everybody probably takes a very different course through the experience. Then we expose them all to pretty much similar experiences, but we already accept beforehand that the experience will be very different. And we do have students regularly who go through a course, who go through a program, and at the end they say, thank you very much, that was so interesting, I will never ever go and start a company. And we usually say that's fair enough, and we think, and it's absolutely fine that you say that now, let's talk again in 10 years, right? So that's usually how we kind of defend it to ourselves. But these different journeys are very interesting, and that's also what I tried to keep telling the team from experiences that I had in Aachen and also now at ECP, we don't really work in a funnel logic, right? So have everybody in the classroom, and then eventually 10% of them, will knock on our doors when we're done, and will ask how to create the company. It's more the experience that people have their own experiences, their own journeys. They usually get something implanted if they're going through our experience-based teaching formats at the Say Institute of ESCP, and many somehow come back. So I was just spending a lot of this day actually in email contact with a guy who was working for a big German traditional company. He's very tall. He's a finance guy, and he took one of our formats, right? He took one of our programs, and a couple of months ago he came back after 3 years out of the program, and he called me up and said, I think I need something to deal with uncertainty. I was like, really? Where? How? Yeah, then he kind of explained what the situation was. But I think that's a good example of how these different paths work. So I think we're just simply accepting that people are diverse and different. We kind of expose them to similar experiences, but we already accepted that they will be very differently imprinted by those.
I like the approach very much, to experience something or to simulate, or to say, like, I think you said implant it and see what happens or not. And 2 years ago, I thought about improvisation, like, there's specific areas in which you need that, like in improv theater and jazz or tango, and then it's innovation, entrepreneurship. And after Corona, I've got the feeling like there's hardly no branch of industry in which I would say, like, they probably won't use it, because there's so much change going on. And I've got a feeling there will be even more change in the next month and years, because everything is changing. And I've got the feeling like everyone needs improvisation. So now there are people out there who not studied improv theater, who are not, attending your lessons in schools. So how would you say in companies with employees, what kind of conditions would support them to deal with this uncertainty, to decide in this uncertainty, or to deal with these changes properly?
Yeah, that's also part of the discussion that I had today in a way, right? So the conversation today was a little bit, so we're planning something where we're involving now many people of that organization. So the whole group is kind of 400 people, and then there are supposed to be a fraction of those are supposed to go into one of our formats, and it's so we're basically inviting them. So a big important point is self-selection. Okay, so it's not 400 people, we're going to do this thing, you'll all be there. No, it's more, we're going to try a different approach. It's more open, it will confront a little bit of the uncertainties that are around, so that we're kind of framing the topic, but then come if you're interested, right? So because it needs, we need them committed. We cannot tell them, here's uncertainty, move towards it and like it. It just doesn't work. Right? It's like pressuring people in the company. We need innovation now. Go and do innovation. That's it. It's funny, but it's not. It's very normal. This is how many companies or decision makers in companies sometimes still think, and that's always that's always surprising me to some extent. So I think the self-selection part is very important. I think it's also very important, obviously, that somewhere in the hierarchy there's backing for the whole experiment there, in a way, and then it has to be somewhat safe, in a way, right? So there needs to be a safe space. There needs to be room for actually acknowledging that there is uncertainty, right? And then you can bring people together. And again, they will have very different experiences. Some will very much like the one approach. Some would probably prefer another one, but we cannot always, figure it out at the same point. I still remember when we that's another automotive company from Bavaria, where we were working, and we were asked to come into a, I think it was the whole department was change management, basically. So only change managers. And the idea was, okay, give us a training on a certain entrepreneurial method. It wasn't even improvisation, but it was, so it was, I think it was also effectuation. And we said, okay, we'll do that. But what we are going to do is we're going to spend maybe a quarter of the day just briefly introducing you to our ideas around uncertainty and where you may find it and how it may look like and how it may feel like. And then we'll spend 3/4 of the day actually training with you the method. The crazy thing was we ended up probably spending almost 80% of the whole day only on the uncertainty thing, because they got totally overexcited. So we literally explained them a little bit, and then they said, okay, we need to stick with that for a bit. Forget the just tell us afterwards a little bit about the method, but let's figure out what can we do with it now. And we told them, well, we could now go and list all the change management projects that are currently somewhere in the air of your department here, and then we could have you interact in small groups, just discussing how uncertain is each of those. And they got crazy about it, because all of a sudden you could see people discussing the same project with very different eyes. So that some would say, that one thing here, that's pretty clear, pretty straightforward, plain vanilla. It's not very uncertain. And 2 other people would look, as if they couldn't believe, and really ask me, how could you say that? There's nothing we know. And then they could figure out that maybe person 1 had more knowledge about it that they weren't aware of. Or they could actually convince person number 1 that whatever the assumptions were in him or her wouldn't hold, because they had some additional information. So everybody was getting really into this thing of, let's use uncertainty, let's allow the discussion about uncertainty. Let's not pretend that we know everything, or that it just needs more time and better homework, basically, to figure it out. Let's accept that there's uncertainty, and let's then take proper decisions of what to do in each of these circumstances. So I think these things, so giving it the room to actually, assume uncertainty, give it a place, assume that it is there, which obviously through COVID, as you said, has become a little bit easier, I guess. And then together with the self-selection part, and then the kind of low barrier entry to it, where they actually can more easily make good experiences. I think that's working quite well.